Chapter 3. We've mentioned Chapter 3 last week. So since we have a midterm exam next week, so let's get a brief summary about the Chapter 3 we have from last week, okay? So remember, what's the purpose for Chapter 3? We've done 90% of transactions from Chapter 1 and 2, right? So we still have a 10% transactions we need to finish for this whole period, okay? So the purpose in Chapter 3 is we want to finish the 10% transactions, okay? Another thing is Chapter 3. When we talk about Chapter 3, when I say now means when? In Chapter 3, now means when? Sorry? Right after the transaction? No. Chapter 1 or 2, when we talk about now, means when the transaction occur, right? If January 1st, you buy equipment. So I'm going to record the transaction. January 1st, I buy the equipment. But that's for the 90% transactions. We still have 10% transactions that happened already. But we know it, we don't want to do it. We are going to wait until last day, right? So Chapter 3, when we talk about now, in Chapter 3, we mean last day, last moment, okay? So for the 10% transactions, we know they exist, we know that, but we don't want to do it. We are going to wait until now. Now means last day, means in Chapter 3, okay? So first thing, we talk about the 10% transaction. Second thing, we talk about the 10% transactions in the last day, okay? The last moment. So it's like your last day of each month or each quarter or each year. Okay? So that's the second thing you have to understand in Chapter 3. Okay? And remember, we talked about two new terms. What are these two new terms we have? First is time period assumptions. 会计期间假设. So what does it mean, time period assumptions? We divided the times into different periods, right? So we divided the time into each month, each quarter, each year, okay? So why we want to do that? Because we want to know what happened for each period. Could you wait? Can you wait until the company closed, then to figure out Apple is good or bad? You cannot wait, right? So each moment, each period, we want to know Apple is good or bad. So that's why we divided the time into each period. So we could understand for each period, like each month, what happened for your companies, okay? So that's time period assumptions. So for time period assumptions, when it's monthly or quarterly, we call it interim period, 期中期间, less than 1 year. How about when we talk about the time period is 1 year? You can call it calendar year or fiscal year, 会计年度或历年制. So what's the difference? The first day, right? So calendar year, the first day always will be January 1st, okay? How about fiscal year? Could be any day except January 1st, okay? So when we talk about fiscal year, 会计年度 could be any day, your first day, but it will not be January 1st because January 1st is the first day we call it calendar year, okay? So that's our first new term we mentioned from last week, right? How about the second new terms we mentioned? Accrual basis accounting, 应计基础会计. So what does it mean, accrual basis accounting? We want to tell you when we should record the transaction, when we should tell them the transaction occurred, happened, when the event occurred, right? So when the event occurred, you should record it. You should tell them something happened. It's not about the cash. So even though we haven't received the cash yet, or we haven't paid the cash yet, it doesn't matter. When you did something, at that moment, you should record it, okay? You should tell them something happened. So that's accrual basis accounting. So for revenues, when we should record the revenues? When revenue occurred, happened, right? So how the revenue occurred, happened? Revenue occurred, happened when you provide the service, sell the product, right? So when you provide the service, when you sell the product, you did something. So you have to tell them, okay, I did something. I provided the services, I sell the products, so I earn the revenues, right? So at that moment, you should recall, okay, I earn the revenue increase, okay? How about expenses? When expenses incurred, happen? When you did something, right? So what kind of things you did that made your expenses incurred happened? Like what? Employees work. So salaries and wages expenses increase, right? Like what? You used water, electricity. So when you used water, electricity, your utility expenses increase, right? What are the other case we have? When we used someone's office, right? So when I used someone's office this month, so what kind of expenses incurred happen? Rent expense, right? So rent expenses incurred happen. So for this kind of things you did, you should tell them something happened, okay? So accrual basis accounting, 应计基础会计 tell you when you did this kind of things, you should record it. You should tell them something happened. So it doesn't matter you receive the cash or not. It doesn't matter you pay the cash or not. It's not about the cash, okay? So that's accrual basis accounting. So remember, comparing to this one, we have another concept. What is that? Accrual basis accounting and cash basis accounting, right? So another one, cash basis accounting. So tell you when we should record the transaction. Everything about cash, right? Cash, and the cash. So when you got the cash or when you pay the cash, only at this situation, we record the transaction, okay? So how about revenue? When we record the revenue? When you receive the cash from customers, right? So when you record expenses, when you pay the cash to someone else, okay? So everything about the cash, that's cash basis accounting. So did you find out the difference between these two? Accrual basis accounting, 应计基础会计 cash basis accounting, 现金基础会计 what's the difference? What's the difference? The difference is accrual basis accounting is not about the cash. It's when transaction occurred, something happened. It doesn't matter it's about cash or not. Something happened. You should tell them something happened, okay? Cash basis accounting, everything only about the cash. Okay, so which one we should follow in accounting? Which one? Sorry? Accrual basis accounting, right? So accrual basis accounting, we should follow it. So any big companies you heard, they follow accrual basis accounting because accrual basis accounting could tell you the whole picture, what happened, okay? Any questions? So because of these two new concepts, so what are these two new concepts? Time period assumptions. Time period assumptions, 会计期间假设 we divided the time into different time periods, right? So in this case, time period assumptions, we divided the time into each month, okay? So we know in July, this month, based on time period assumptions. So that's why we have a July, we have August, okay? And in July, this time period, also based on accrual basis accounting, 应计基础会计 told you, during this period, everything happened, you should record it, okay? So in July, everything happened, you should tell them something happened. So two things happened, we should tell them two things happened, okay? It doesn't matter it's about cash or not, it doesn't matter. So we tell them two things. First thing, we worked so hard, so we earn the revenues. But the problem is, did you get the cash or not? Not yet, okay? So first thing, we tell them we earn the revenues, but customer didn't pay us money, okay? Second thing, okay, we take the taxi, so we have the expenses happened, but we pay the cash, okay? So did you find out accrual basis accounting 应计基础会计 told you two things. So it's not always about the cash, okay? So did you find out the first thing is not about the cash. Second thing is about the cash. But it doesn't matter. Two things happen, we record two things, okay? So because of these two terms, these two new concepts, that's why if you find out, you just recall one thing, oh, it's okay, it's not okay, because we follow accrual basis accounting, right? So when you find out, you just recall one thing, you didn't recall the second thing, what should we do? Recall it now. Now means when? In chapter 3, when we talk recall it now means when? Last day, okay? So chapter 3 about last day, okay? So recall it now, last day. So that's why we use adjusting entries, 调整分录, right? So adjusting entries, 调整分录, what's our purpose? We use the entry, 分录, okay? We use journal entry, the entry. So what's our purpose? Our purpose is to adjust, to fix the problems, right? So this is our purpose. Okay? We use adjusting entries. We try to fix the problems. So what's the problems? For the 10% transactions happened already, but we haven't recorded yet, right? So what should we do? Fix it, adjust it. So how? Record it now. Now means last day, okay? So right now, what we want to do is to record the 10% transactions, okay? Now, remember, now we mean last day. Okay, so that's what we've mentioned from last week. Also, there's the purpose in chapter 3. So in chapter 3, we talk about these kind of things. We want to fix the problems for the 10% transactions, okay? Any questions? Williams, okay? You fine? Okay. So don't forget, in chapter 3, there's our purpose right here. That's why, based on this, we have a couple of things we have to do, right? Okay. So for the 10% transactions, remember, why? Why? We know that 10% transactions exist, but why? We don't want to recall it during the whole period until now, last day. So what are these three major reasons? We know that 10% transactions, but we don't want to do it until now, last day. So what's the first major reason? Daily transaction, right? So what's a daily transaction? that transaction happened every day. Since it happens every day, we don't want to waste our time. So we don't want to do it every day, every day, every day. Do the same thing every day, every day, every day, right? So we skip it until last day. Recall it just once, okay? So we just want to do it once on the last day. So that's the first reason. Second reason, why? For that 10% transactions, we know it. We know that it exists, but we don't want to do it until now, last day. Because of time, right? So because of time, that happened every second, every minute. Could you do that? Impossible. I don't want to do it because every second, every minute, how can I do it? Impossible. So that's why I don't want to do it until last day, okay? So like what? Interest because of time. Rent because of time, right? Williams, for your second year, when you decide to live out of campus, you have to pay the rent for how long? Each month. So you live in anywhere, 1 year, 12 months. You have to pay the rent for 12 months. Okay, so it's because of time. Insurance because of time, right? When you want to go abroad, like any countries, for 7 days, you have to buy 7 days insurance. When you want to go abroad, like 1 month, you are going to buy 1 month insurance. So insurance is because of time, right? Okay. So 3 quite common cases we have. That's because of time. Could you do it? No, impossible. So we are going to wait until last day. Okay. What's the third major reason? We don't know the number, right? Since we don't know the number, we cannot do it. So we are going to wait until last day. Okay? Any questions so far we have? So from chapter 1 to right now, there's a whole process we have, right? So see, we are going to review the midterm exam for you guys. Yeah? We go through again the process again. So chapter 1, what should we do? We're trying to understand how to analyze the transaction, right? And figure out how the transaction affect your company, okay? After you understand it, what should we do? Record it on our first accounting book, right? So generalize means what? Record it on your first accounting book, right? After that, don't forget, first accounting book is not enough. Why? Because we are going to answer manager's questions. Manager is going to ask you, hey, Crystal, right? How much money we have right now, today? Could you answer the questions? Can you answer the question based on the first book? Impossible. Not impossible. You are going to say, oh, give me 10 minutes. But, the company managers, they are not going to wait. So that's why we're trying to summarize the data into your second book. So you're transfer data from your second book, okay? Based on what? Account, right? So based on account, first book is based on the date. Second book based on account because we want to answer questions anytime, okay? So after we finish 2 books, every numbers on 2 books, they are money. So since everything about the monies, we have to be very careful. That's why so far, after you finish 2 books, we do our first double check. So when we do our first double check? On the last day, right? So on the last day, we do our first double check. What's that? Trial balance, 试算表, right? So trial balance, 试算表, we do it on the last day to double check all the answers, numbers we have. Okay? So after 2 books, we do our first double check trial balance on the last day to make sure all the numbers so far we have, they are maybe correct, okay? I say maybe, if you still remember, total debits equal to total credits. Maybe they are correct, but still, you could make a couple mistake. But still, total debit equal to total credits. Okay, so far, you just finished 90%, right? Remember? You just finished 90% transactions from your chapter 102. So even though all those numbers, they are correct, but the problem is just only 90% transactions. Is enough? Of course not, because accrual basis accounting 依据基础会计 told you. What should we do? We should recall 100% everything happened, right? So that's why in chapter 3, what should we do? On the last day now, we use adjusting entries, try to recall the 10% transactions using adjusting entries, right? So 调整分录 adjusting entries. Trying to recall the 10% transactions. After you've done chapter 3, finally, we got 100% transactions. We can get the complete whole pictures about your companies, okay? Any questions? So I hope you have, the structure, understand the whole process we have so far. Okay, so for the 10% transactions, remember, because of 3 major reasons. First is what? Daily transactions. Second is what? Because of time. Third is what? You don't know the number. So because of these 3 major reasons, we still have a 10% transactions we haven't recorded yet, right? So first is because of daily transaction. Second is because of time. Third is you don't know the number, so amounts. You don't know it. Okay? So because of these 3 major reasons, we still have a 10% transactions. Okay? So for the 10% transactions right now, we'll try to fix it. Okay? So how to fix it? Okay? Okay, so since you understand all the pictures concept we have, so let's just look at the 10% transactions. Remember, 10% transactions, based on their situations, we could classify into 2 groups, right? So the first group is what? Deferrals. Second group is accruals, right? So it's on your slide, page 24, textbook 3-6. So based on their situations, we have first group deferrals, 递延项目. We have second group accruals, 应计项目. Okay? And last week, we just mentioned accruals, 应计项目, because it's easier for you guys. Okay? So why is easier for you guys? Accruals, 应计项目, totally the same as your chapter 1 and 2. So the only difference is what? Chapter 1 and 2, when transaction happened, you recall it immediately. So you recall the transaction on transaction date, okay? But right here, totally the same transaction, but the problem is we talk about their 10% transactions. So even though their transaction happened already, did you recall it? No, you didn't. You wait until today, last day, okay? So for accruals, totally the same as chapter 1 and 2, okay? So the only difference is it happened, but you didn't recall it yet. So for these two, for example, remember accrued means occurred happened, right? Accrued means occurred happened. So these two means occurred happened. Okay? So your revenues occurred happened. Your expenses occurred happened. Okay? So we talk about the revenue expenses occurred happened. So revenues occurred. Expenses occurred.已发生的收入和费用。Again, could you tell me what kind of situations you could tell me your revenue happened? Provided services, sell the product. Did you find out we repeat the same sentence since the first week to right now? When we talk about revenue happened, means what? You earn the revenues, right? How you earn the revenues? Provided the services, sell the products. So did you find out the same always? We talk about these kind of things. Okay? So revenues, when you provided services or sell the product. Okay? Which means you earn the revenues. Okay? So did you find out totally the same as your chapter 1 or 2? But the only difference is what? Only difference is when you earn the revenues, maybe on January 4th, but you didn't recall yet, okay? So the only thing different right here, we talk about like 10% transactions is maybe on July, okay, July 4th. So these kind of things happened on July 4th. But the problem is, did you recall yet? Not yet, because in chapter 3, we talk about the 10% transactions. Even though they happened already, but we don't want to recall it until last day, right? So maybe on July 4th, but the problem is, but haven't recalled yet. Okay? So the thing is, happened on July 4th, but you haven't recalled yet right now, okay? So that's why we should recall it now. Now means when? Today, last day, okay? So in chapter 3, we find out that 10% transactions. So we should recall it now, okay? So what should we do? We are going to recall it now. So for your revenues, we know it happened already, but we haven't recorded yet. So what should we do? Now, remember, now means last day. We use adjusting entry 调整分录 to record revenue. Okay? But could you tell me, when I'm going to record the revenues, right? The same, two effects. Could you give me two effects? What's the first effect? First effect, second effect. The same as your chapter 102, right? Okay, I know. Something happened. Revenue, I earned the revenue, right? I should record it on July 4th, but I didn't. So I record it now on last day. So the same, I'm going to record the revenues. Give me two effects. First effect, what's that? You earn the revenue, so your revenue increase, right? So you are going to say, okay, my revenue, service revenue is about, for example, provider service. So my revenue increase, right? That's your first effect. How about your second effect? Then you have to ask, you earn the revenues, but customer give you the money or not? Usually, when transaction occurred on July 4th, but you haven't recorded yet, did you get the cash or not? It's not. Why? If you got the cash, you will always record it now. Everything about the cash, we cannot wait. We are going to record it immediately. Why? Because cash is the most dangerous asset. Why cash is the most dangerous asset? Why? Do you have a $100? Crystal, $100. Give it to me. You're scared. Why? Why you're scared? For example, your iPhone. Could you give me your iPhone now? Borrow me the iPhone now? No? Oh, you're so... Could you give me the $100 now? Borrow me. I just borrow it now. Come on, my name, Claire, not doesn't worth $100. Give me $100, please, right now. Okay, give me. $100, not $1,000. Where's 100? 100. My face, my name. Don't worry about 100. Now $100,000. Justin, you don't have the money? Oh, so poor. Do you have money to buy the lunch? Thank you, Ethan. See, Ethan, I can only count on you. $100. Why? Why the most dangerous asset? Did you find any name on the money you have? No, right? So if I keep it, could you prove that's your money? You cannot. So why is the most dangerous asset? Because you cannot prove that's yours. But your cell phone, your iPad, could you prove that's yours? Yes, right? You have your personal information or password or anything on your iPad, on your cell phone, right? But could you prove that's your money? You cannot. So if I keep it, that's my money forever, you know? Ethan, don't worry about 100. Okay, thank you. So see, why? Cash is the most dangerous asset because when you lose asset cash, you lose it forever. You cannot prove this is your money, right? So everything about the cash, see, you are so worried about the money, right? Yeah, everything about the cash, the same. Company, we are so worried about our cash. So if you find out everything about the cash, we don't wait. because we are so worried if we skip it, we forgot it, we lost our cash forever, okay? So when that 10% transaction happened, we know it, but we don't want to record it because that's not about the cash, okay? So this case, we don't record yet. We haven't recorded yet because it's not about the cash. So the same time, no cash. Okay? So since you know it's not about the cash, could you give me the second effect? I earn the revenues. So customer pay you the money or not? Customer pay you the money or not? Not yet. No cash. So you earn the revenues from customers on July 4th. Customers didn't pay you the cash yet. That's why we don't record it because we don't worry. We just record it last day. It doesn't matter, okay? So you haven't received the cash from customers, means customer owe you money. Second effect, what's that? Accounts receivables, right? So I know the second effect is what? Accounts receivables because customers haven't paid us money yet. So second effect, accounts receivables. Okay, any questions? No problem? Okay, so there's a first transaction we have about revenues. How about expenses? Totally the same. You understand revenue occurred, the same for expenses occurred. So could you tell me expenses occurred? What kind of situation expenses occurred? You did something. So we've mentioned three most common things you've done. What's that? Employees work, right? So like what? Employees work. What kind of expenses incurred happen? Salaries and wages expenses incur, right? So what else? You used water and electricity. So what kind of expenses incurred? Utility expense incurred. If you use someone's office, what kind of expenses incurred happened? Rent expense incurred happened, right? So expenses incurred happened. Totally the same as your chapter 1 or 2, right? So again, what's the difference? These kind of things maybe happened on July 4th, again the same. But did you recall yet? Not yet, okay? So the only difference from chapter 1 and 2 is chapter 1 and 2, July 4th, you recall it immediately. Chapter 3, for the 10% transactions, I know that happened on July 4th, but I don't want to recall it until now, last day, okay? So expenses, again, maybe they happened on July 4th. So these kind of things happened on July 4th. But did you recall yet? Not yet. But haven't recorded yet. Okay? So something happened, we didn't record yet. So that's why we record it now. Okay? So we are going to record it now. So for expenses, what should we do? Now, last day, we use adjusting entry to record our expenses. Okay, so what we are going to do, we last day record the expenses now. Okay, so the same, give me two effects. First effect, what's that? Expenses incurred happen, right? So I'm going to say, okay, recall, maybe salaries and wages expenses incurred, utility expenses incurred, rent expenses incurred, right? So the first effect is different kind of expenses incurred happened. What's the second effect? Did you pay? Not yet, right? So the same as revenues. If everything about the cash, we cannot wait. So everything about the cash, we are going to record it on transaction day. We cannot wait until last day, okay? So these kind of things happened, we haven't recorded yet. So means what? It's not about the cash, okay? So no cash. Okay, since no cash means expenses incurred happen, I haven't paid yet, right? So second effect, what's that? Accounts payable, right? Expenses incurred happen, but we haven't paid the cash. Means what? We owe them money, right? So your accounts payable increase. Any questions? No problem, right? So there's a whole concept, actually, structures we have from your first group accruals. So based on this, you will understand how to finish your transactions about accruals, okay? Any questions? So there's a whole concept we have from last week, and summarize, give you a brief, ideas, and maybe you have a clear picture now. So last week we want you to finish transaction 1 and 2, right? So do you know how to finish it yet? If you haven't finished, please finish transaction 1 and 2. Okay? Your handout, chapter 3, page 21. Page 21, transaction 1 is about revenues. Transaction 2 is about expense. So if you haven't finished it, take your time. We have only 5 minutes. You can try to finish it. And second hour, I will tell you how to finish it. Give you some, explanations. Try to think about the picture, the structure. When we talk about 10 transactions, 100 transactions, actually, it's only this, the structure right here. So transaction 1 is about revenues, accrued revenues, 已发生的收入。Transaction 2 is about accrued expenses, 已发生的费用。So transaction 1 is about revenues. Transaction 2 is about interest. If you finish, you can take a break. If you haven't finished, still you can take a break. Okay, because it's 10 o'clock, so you can take a break. And we will continue the content after break.